Hi everyone, it's Justine here again from our sewing room. Thanks so much for all your support with our previous sew along. We had a request from Christine to do a second sew along, and this time she wanted to see us make the Pattern Emporium Walk Boldly pants. So here we go. Thanks again for joining us. Today we're going to step you through how to make the Walk Boldly pants. I'll pop a link down in the comments of where to buy the pattern. So measure your size as per the tutorial, follow all the directions for the cutting instructions, cut out your pants. This Walk Boldly pattern is designed for stretch fabrics. All of your fabric information again is at the beginning of the pattern. So I'm going to pick up and start the sewing element of it. So now after cutting out, what we should have is we should have a back leg section, and you can tell this is the back leg because it's just got the round curve. They need to be mirrored, and what that means is that you've got two pieces and they are opposite to each other. So one piece the pattern goes in that way, and on the other piece the pattern is that way. So mirrored just means the opposite of each other. So you should have two back pieces mirrored. Then you should have two front pieces mirrored. For this particular pair, I'm going to show you how to do the front fake fly and do the top stitching on that. So that's why the front sections have this strange looking cutout. So on the front sections, again, there's two pieces and they're mirrored. So I have the pattern on the top, and each piece is opposite each other. So I have two fronts, two backs. I also have a waistband. You can opt to cut this on the fold, which is what the pattern suggests. I was being a bit miserable with my fabric, so I've got two pieces which I've allowed for a seam allowance, and I will join together before I attach the waistband. There are several different pocket options on the Walk Boldly pants, the jeans pocket. So you will also need to have two mirrored pieces cut out of the jeans pocket. So there, as I said, there are different options. I just preferred with the plaid look that the jeans pocket would give it a really nice finish. So hopefully you're going to enjoy sewing along with me. Okay, our first step is to prepare our pocket opening. So what I have here is I have a front section with the right side facing up. I've grabbed the pocket that we've cut, and I'm just aligning the side seam, the side edge of that pocket and the top edge of that pocket. Now you will have made a cut line in the beginning when you cut it out at the bottom. So if you just fold on that cut line, that should sit neatly across the pattern. So just pop that on neatly across the pattern. Make sure that your side edges are matched up here, and then just open that pocket back out. Now what we want to do is actually just take this, make sure it's correctly lined up at the sides and at the top edge here and the side edges here, and I want to cut out this opening on my front pants bit. So I'm just going to run my rotary cutter very carefully, my fingers out of the way, along there. So what will happen is you will have a piece cut out like that on your main front section of your pants. So if you just repeat that, so now what we have here is our pockets cut out on the front section of the pant, as well as, so we have the pocket, and now we have cut the front section out of our pant leg as well. So if you just repeat that on the other side, and then we'll move on to the next step. So now our two front sections should look like this. This is the crotch section with the front fly, and we've just cut out our pocket corners. So you should find that both of your front sections are mirror imaged and with all of those sections cut out. Now we have our pants with the right side facing up, and we want to grab the corresponding pocket that matches to this pocket opening when the wrong side of the pocket is facing up. So basically we've got the right sides of the pocket and the right sides of the pants facing together. Now what we want to do is match this curve up neatly and clip it together where we're going to go and overlock that on our overlocker. If you don't have an overlocker, you can do this on a sewing machine with a straight stitch. So what we want to do is we want to stitch around that pocket opening here. So now what we've done is we have joined our pocket and our front leg together at that pocket with our overlocker, and we now have a beautiful curve. So you'll end up with a pattern piece that looks as such like that. So that again is our front fly section, and our pockets are now joined together as such. So just repeat that for the other side, and then we'll come back and go on to the next step. Now what we want to do is understitch our seam. This will help the pants sit nice and flat when you wear them. So what you need to do is put your pants right side up. This is the edge of the crotch and this is the pocket piece. What you need to do is push that seam that we've just overlocked towards the pocket. So if you feel with your fingers, you'll have that seam underneath the pocket piece. So what we then do is we go onto our sewing machine with a straight stitch and we sew along the pocket edge to understitch. So that means that we are sewing the pocket and we are catching that seam there that we just overlocked and sewing it down with a straight stitch. I'll show you on my machine. Okay, so now we're understitching. So this is our pocket piece over this side here, and this is our seam that we just created before when we joined the pocket to the pants. What we've done is that overlocking seam is pressed up towards the pocket, and that's what we're stitching down. So the aim is to stitch with your machine as close to this seam as what you can without actually stitching on it. So we just want to very carefully not pull the fabric away from each other and understitch using a straight stitch on our machine, and just keeping that fabric away and making sure that that seam allowance from our overlocker is pressed up towards the pocket. And what we will now have is our seam is understitched, so that as our pocket turns over onto itself, it will sit nice and flat. So please repeat that step on the other side pocket as well. Okay, so what we've done on our previous step is both pockets have now been understitched. So you can see there that the stitching that we just did on our sewing machine is actually on the pocket. So we stitched our pocket edge down, and then when we turn that under, what will happen is you won't actually, that is the front of my pants, so that pocket will just sit nicely and you won't see any of that stitching because that stitching is actually on the pocket piece. Okay, the next step is to turn that pocket so that you've now got the wrong sides of the pocket to the wrong side of the pants, and give that pocket a nice press on your iron. So you'll have this lovely pocket edge, and optional step next is to top stitch that. So as you can see, this is our pant. I'm just going to get my pocket out of the way, the front of our pants and our pocket edge here. I prefer to do a top stitch. I'm going to use my cover stitch machine, and I am going to sew a nice row along that pocket edge on the front leg of the pants. This time, if you are going to top stitch it using your sewing machine, please make sure that you are sewing nice and evenly, go nice and slowly, and you want to do it on the pants leg this time. So that will give it a nice top stitch. Before you top stitch, my advice would be to go and iron it, and then also to just match that pocket seam to the seam of your pants, so that as you're top stitching, your pocket's not moving around. Right, now we've top stitched around our pockets, we now have the pants with the wrong side facing up. So the right side of the pocket is showing and the wrong side of the pants is showing. So what you need to do now, this is the pocket opening over here, is to find that little notch that you cut out earlier, which indicates where we're going to fold. Now there'll be a notch at both the top of the pocket and the bottom of the pocket. So if you fold, grab the other side, the side the long side, not where we've just sewn, so the long round side, and pull that over until you reach that notch at the bottom. Didn't cut mine big enough. Where is it? Here we go. So where that notch is at the bottom, I'm just going to pop a little clip in there, and also that notch at the top as well. So if we just pop some clips in there, and we've folded that to, so we've now got our right sides together, we've got the wrong side of the pants up, and we've got our right sides of our pocket together. So now what should happen is when we clip those together at the notches, we should have this beautiful edge lining up nicely. So now the edges of our pockets have matched on the other edge that you haven't clipped. So this is the open edge of our pockets. Where they meet at the bottom, put a clip in there, and then what we want to do is we want to pull our pocket up away from the pants. So this is the top of my pants, this is the bottom of my pocket. What we want to do is pull that piece up just away from the pants, and now what we want to do is sew along that edge there. So again, this is the top of my pants, I've matched the side of my pocket together, clip that at the bottom, this is folded at the notch, lift that up, and we want to sew along this edge here, overlocker, and sew that edge of the pocket pants. So we've got our folded pocket here that we just top stitched. Underneath on the wrong side, we're sewing the bottom of the pocket. So it should be loose, it won't be attached to anything at the moment, and we want to sew along that edge of the pocket. So you will be sewing on the wrong sides of both of the pocket bottom. Sure that this side part of the pocket aligns neatly with the side part of the pants, and I just want to pin or clip that into place. So you can see my pants on a flat surface, that everything is sitting nice and flat. That's the fold edge underneath the fabric of my pocket on the inside of the pant leg. So you can see the sides are nicely matched up there, and now what I want to do is just make sure that the top part of that pocket where it's folded is also matching up to the top part of my pants, and just clip that as well. Now what you need to do is just make sure that all the edges are joined together, because this will make your pockets sit nice and flat when you're wearing them. So just clip that down, and what we need to do now is go over to our sewing machine, and we want to baste across the top section here and across down the bottom of the pocket there. By basting we mean a long straight stitch that we can pull out later on. Okay, so we're over at our sewing machine now. We have a long straight stitch selected, and we are just going to baste along our side of our pants. This stitch will be removed later, so if you go outside the seam allowance, it won't be a problem. So we just want to quickly baste along with our seams nice and even, and just making sure that everything stays nice and flat. And then we want to also come along over to that top section that we pinned the side of our the top of our pocket, and again do the same thing there. And just baste both of them together. So we also want to repeat that for the other leg. So what we will have is we will have the top of our pocket basted and the side of our pocket basted as well. Okay, just before we put our front pants down and work on the back, I just want you to grab the left hand side piece. So that will be the piece that's on your left hand side of your body when worn. So your left hand side pocket, grab that piece. You will have also cut out a piece of interfacing. Now you cut it sticky side facing up, so that will match perfectly with the interfacing on the wrong side of that fly section. So if you go and iron that on to the wrong side of the left hand front piece of your pants, we can then move on to the back section. Now you need to locate your back pieces. What you will have done of when you cut them out is you would have marked the bottom of the dart. So I have 2 pins in here for the bottom of the darts, and then I have cut 2 notches at the tops. I've cut notches for the top of my dart. So each back piece will have pins for where the bottom of the dart is, plus the notches at the top of the dart. I find it easier to work with the wrong side of the fabric facing up when preparing my darts. So first of all, I want to grab the first 2 notches and just join them together at the top of. So I've got my 2 notches joined together, and what I do is just pop a pin. Now, I always remember when I'm sewing my darts that the dart is actually going to be sewn as so. So I want to pop my pin in with my 2 notches matching and pop my pin just in along there to stop that moving. Now I've got the bottom of my dart pin here and the top of my dart pin there. So if I just lay that flat, and then I want to just make sure that the bottom pin is over to the edge of my fabric. So hopefully you can see that like that. And then I grab a little ruler, and where the top of my notches start, I pop my ruler in there, and I have my ruler just sitting over the top of that bottom pin. And we just want to draw a straight line from the top section there to the bottom, and a nice straight line so that when we sew that dart we have got a line to sew along to. Okay, so we want to do the second dart the same way. So again, I want to match up my 2 notches here. So I want to match up the 2 notches at the top with a pin. I find it easier to use the pins across. So I have my 2 notches matched at the top of my dart, and then I just move my fabric around so that the bottom circle pin is just right on the edge of where I want that dart to end. I grab my ruler, and starting at the notches and ending at the pin, I just simply put that angle right and then just draw a straight line with my ruler, and that way I then know that I'm going to be sewing in that straight line. Here we want to use a standard straight stitch, and we want to make sure that again that dart is going to start at the top of that line that we just drew with our marking pen. So I always just pop my needle down to make sure I'm on that line, remove my pin, and then I'm just going to keep my fabric nice and straight, slow that speed down, and make sure that I'm sewing nice and slowly on that line until I get to my other pin at the bottom. Now I don't want to cut my cotton here, so I'm just going to raise up my needle and my presser foot and just bring that all the way out and just cut that off. Then what we do with our darts is we actually just grab that thread that we just cut off at the end of our dart and just manually tie them into a knot. It's much neater finish on your darts if you do it this way rather than back stitching, because the back stitching will make the end of the dart not sit nice and flat. So if we just tie that in, and then we have a nice little knot at the end of our dart, and we can cut that off. So now if we repeat that step for all other 3 darts, and then we'll come back. Okay, we're done at the ironing board. I'm just going to show you how to iron our darts for a really nice finish. So I've basically just got the dart sitting out on its own. I want to iron that flat. I do not want to iron down to the tip. So I just want to iron the dart piece flat. So do not go down to the tip. Again, with that same dart. Now on the wrong side, what you want to do is this time you want to find the center back, so not the piece that's got the curve but the outer edge, and what you want to do is iron the dart towards the center back. This time you can iron the whole dart including the tip. So just press that dart towards the center back including that tip part, Then you can turn them over and do the same thing from the right side of the fabric. So we're ironing them, making sure that they're pressed towards the center back and going all the way down the tip of the dart. And what you'll have is a nice finish on your darts. What we're going to do next, we're going to join our leg seams together. So what I've done is I've popped a back piece with the right sides facing up. So that's the piece with the 2 darts that we just did. So place that facing up. And what you want to do is have a look where that round crotch seam is and just make that seam sit nice and straight like that. We then want to grab a front piece. Now the front piece will go with the right sides facing down. So to know you've got the right front piece to the right back piece, you will have your 2 crotch sections matching here. So you will know that they're the right pieces because the crotch sections will match. So you've got right sides of your fabric together, and what we're doing along where that crotch seam is, you can see there, we're going to sew all the way along that inner leg seam. So we're going to attach that together with our pins or our clips, starting at that crotch seam. So just to reinforce, this is a front piece with the pocket and a back piece with the darts, and we are matching that inner leg seam all the way from the top right down to the bottom. Now that we've clipped our inner leg seam together, we also want to go ahead and join our outside seams at the same time. So we have the front section with that pocket that we've basted down, so we want to join the back section to that at the side seams. So starting from the top, pin that where the waist matches and just pin all the way along that outer leg seam. So I'm still on the same piece. I've got the inner leg seam clipped and now I'm doing the outer leg seam. So just clipping that all the way down to the bottom, and then we'll sew both of them together with our overlocker. Okay, so we're just going to begin with our right side facing up, and we're going to start with our inner leg crotch seam using a 6mm seam allowance. So trying to make sure those sides. Always making sure to feel as you're sewing to make sure that there's no lumps and bumps and you haven't caught the pants in your overlocking. Again, always making sure your fabric is nice and flat as you're sewing and you're not pulling it through the machine. Now we're coming up to the pocket, but we've basted that down, so it should just nicely sew through all 4 layers of fabric. We have 2 pocket layers and our pants front and our pants back. So now what we have is our pants. We have 1 front joined to 1 back, and it's joined on that outer leg seam and that inner leg seam. As you can see, I've overlocked both seams, catching that pocket in there at that side seam as well. So if we just repeat that for the other leg, and then we'll come back and put them together. Okay, now we have both legs. We want to turn 1 leg pant, just 1, into the right way out. So we will have 1 pant leg the right way out and 1 pant leg the wrong way out. So what we now want to do is pop that pant leg that we just turned right way out inside the other pant leg. So just put your hand all the way through. I keep this seam that we just sewed on the inner leg on top of my arm. I then just push that into the other pant leg. So this is the one, the wrong side's facing up. I'm just going to push that pant leg all the way through until it pops out the bottom. So now what I've got is that seam of the inner leg seam of that piece that I've just pushed through, the inner leg seam of the other piece, put them both together, bring my hand out, and I shall have one lot of pants. Now I want to just make sure that that crotch seam is, I have them, their right sides together, and where that crotch seam meets, that's where my starting point is. So grab both of those seams and just pin or clip that together. That's how we know we've got our pants in the right way. So what we should have, bear in mind I am doing the fake fly on my pants. What we should have now is the two front sections open along the crotch. We have our pin where we met our two inner leg seams at the crotch, and we have a nice back curve crotch here as well. So our back sections are, our two lots of darts are together, and we just have one opening of our whole fly, our whole crotch section. So to start with, grab your clips and we'll clip the bottom curve together. So just making sure that's nice and even all the way around. Pin or clip that bottom curve matching at the waistline. There's no need to stretch this, it should just fit perfectly together without having to stretch or maneuver it around. So now I've got my back section, my back crotch curve all pinned, clipped together. Now at the front section, what I want to do is I'm just going to clip till I get up to the base of my fake fly. So I'm just going to clip that together just to keep it nice and even. And then I'm going to clip my fake fly together as well. So again, I'm going to match the outer edges of the fake fly. That was the piece we interfaced earlier. Just going to clip that together. Again, you shouldn't need to stretch it. It should just sit beautifully together. So now I've got the outer edges of my front fly clipped and around to that inner leg clipped. Now if we grab our pattern piece, which out of respect for Pattern Emporium and Kate, I'm not going to show on YouTube, there will be a center front dashed line. So what we need to do is on our interfacing, we need to mark that line. So there will be, it will start roughly about here and it will go all the way up to about here. So if we grab our pattern, we can put a pin in at one end, a pin at the middle and a pin at the end. And then once our pins, once our pattern piece is removed, we can then draw a line with our chalk just up there, a straight line along that front fly. Okay, so you can see I've drawn a pink line from that, copied that dashed line on the pattern piece, and I'm ending that here. So what we now need to do is take these two pieces, so I've got the two front sections clipped together, and what we want to do is where that straight line that we've just drawn in pink, I just want to do a straight stitch on my sewing machine following that line. I've now followed that line on my sewing machine all the way down until I got to the end of the pink line down here, and I've just back stitched that to secure. For our next step, we're going to be overlocking our crotch seam. So what we're going to do is we're going to start from the back section and we're going to overlock all around the back right through to the front, and when we get to our fake fly, we're going to just keep following the direction of the fabric to overlock. So we will just keep following this line all the way around, and our overlocking will catch the bottom of that straight stitch that we did earlier. So head on over to our overlocker, and starting from the back, we will overlock that crotch section together. Just go slowly around the curve. I find this next step easier to grab that leg out and turn our pants in the right way. So I will just open them out so they're like a pair of pants. I've still got the wrong side facing towards me. What we now want to do is where we've just sewn that front fly, we want to press that over so that the interfacing section is facing down. So now I've pinned that into place on the wrong side of my fabric. And I've just used 3 pins, avoiding the exterior part of the front fly because we're going to stitch that down from the right side of the fabric. So I don't want my pins getting in the way of that overlocked edge. So just ensure that the pins are in the center of the front fly. Now I find this step easier with our pants laying flat on the table, just nice and neat. And what you'll need to get is your front fly template piece. It's called the Fly Top Stitching Template. What you want to do is pop that with this straight edge against the center front seam of your pants. So you'll be putting that up against the center seam of your pants, and you can grab a pattern weight and just make sure that that's not going to move anywhere. And now what we want to do is grab our fabric pen, and we just want to do a line on the outside of that template because that is going to be our stitch line. So try and be nice and neat with that line, and you will see once we remove that template, we now have a stitch line of our crotch that we are going to take over to our sewing machine or our cover stitch, and from the right side we're going to follow that line all the way around and stop at that center seam. You can do that on a sewing machine using a long straight stitch, or you can do it on a cover stitch. I'm going to use my cover stitch today. Okay, so when I start mine, I make sure that I'm starting right on that center curve, and I like to start at the bottom curve. I just find it easier to finish at the top of the waistband. So on my cover stitch, I'm going to just sew very slowly as I go around this curve, and I just pull the fabric with both hands. I'm pushing it away this way and pulling it towards me this way, just so that I'm creating that nice curve. And then once I hit on that straight line, I'll straighten my pants up and just continue sewing all the way along to get that really nice roundness on my fly. So you can see my stitching has started right on the center here, and then it's going all the way around back up to the top. Now, as an optional step, you can do a little bar tack stitch in here. That's what a lot of ready to wear pants have on them, that little bar tacking stitch. I'll take you over to my machine and just show you how I do that. Okay, I'll show you what a bar tacking stitch looks like before I do it on my machine. So over to my sewing machine, and I have selected my zigzag stitch. Now, I have my stitch width on 2 mil and I have my stitch length on 0.2 of a mil. So basically what you want is a little zigzag, and you want it to be really tight and it creates that bar tacking that we see on ready to wear clothing. So I'll just do a quick sample for you and you can see what it's going to look like. It's used a lot to hold straps together, mainly used on pants, anywhere on shorts, the edge of pockets where there's a high tension area. So that's what a bar tacking stitch looks like. So it's just a small little row of zigzag stitches that where there's high tension on an area, it helps reinforce that part. So again, on my pants, I'm going to find that little beginning part of my crotch. It will also help to secure my cover stitching into place. Now I want to be really accurate here and make sure that my bar tacking stitch only will be about 1 centimetre long. And as you can see there, if you can see that little bar tacking stitch is just at the front of my pants there. Now locate our waistband piece. So if you were like me and cut 2 pieces, we need to join them together. So if you put the right sides of your waistband together, and if you join one end on your overlocker, then we'll come back and I'll show you this neat little trick that Kate does for our elastic. So I'm just going to leave that one edge open and I'm just going to run this one through on the overlocker. If you did cut your waistband on the fold, you can just skip to the next step. So I have my waistband joined together at the back, and now at this open edge seam, what we want to do is grab our pins and we want to sew on our sewing machine using a straight stitch along this open edge. However, we want to leave a gap of about 2.5 centimeters in the middle of our bottom section. So what I find easier is to fold this in half, pop a pin in that middle section where that is. So now I have got 3 pins in the end. Now I want to leave a gap from about here, so about 1 inch below halfway, and then I want to leave it about 2.5 centimeters. So just using my eyes, that's about 1 inch. So I've got some pins in here. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to sew from this edge here right through into the green pin. I'm going to back stitch there, really important. Then I'm going to start at the blue pin. I'm going to back stitch here and continue off the edge. So what that in effect is going to do is leave a hole in my waistband between these 2 pins here. Okay, so still using our 6mm seam allowance and back stitch to start. Sew over the red pin, that was just our guide, and a sew up into the green pin. I'm just going to back stitch here. Now I've set my machine to cut those threads, so I'll pull that pin out, and now I'm going to start back down at my blue pin here, pop my needle down, take my pin out, put my foot back down. It'll do a little back stitch and just go to the end, a little back stitch again, and that'll cut off. If you press that seam that we've just created open, what you will see is that there's a hole in the middle of our waistband, which is perfect because we're going to use that hole to insert our elastic through. So what we want to do is, keeping that seam pressed open, you can do that on your iron if you prefer, is we're going to fold that waistband in half with our wrong sides together. So what we want to do where we've made that seam is just pop a pin in. So we've now got our right side of our waistband facing up. So I'm just going to pop a pin right in the middle of that seam so that that's my first quarter mark. Now because I was miserable with my fabric, I do have another seam marker where I joined it together at the other end. So making sure that my overlocking seams are lying nice and flat, I'm going to pin that there as well. What I'm doing here is dividing my waistband into quarters. So if you had cut it on the fold, you would have had a notch there to match. So now we have 2 reference points. So now what we do is we just match those reference points together. So that would either be your center front fold or the seam that we made to join them together. Match those 2 pins together and just keeping them nice and tight together. I now have my 3rd reference point at this end here, and I'm just going to pop a pin in there as well. I now have 3 out of my 4 quarter marks, so I just do the same thing at this edge here as well. So again, folding it right sides together, fabric's not cooperating down this end, and making sure that my seams in the middle are matched, and then that is my next quarter with 4 pins in it. So we have our four marks of our waistband. To insert our waistband, I find it easy to turn the pants to the wrong side out, and what you'll need to locate is the center front seam of our pants, and just pop a pin in there. The center back seam of our pants, again another pin in there, and our 2 side seams, and we'll pop pins in there too. So our waistband, as you can see, is slightly narrower than our pants. We haven't done anything wrong here. What we need to do is stretch our waistband to fit our pants. This will help them stay up. So what I find looks nicer is the 2 seams that I've sewn. If you've only got 1 seam that you've sewn, you'll use that as your center back where you match that. However, because I've sewn 2, I'm matching mine at the sides. So what you need to do firstly is put the waistband with the folded edge facing down the bottom of the pants. So we're matching our raw edges of our waistband to the raw edges of our pants. So matching our front pins, we just pin that together. So we now have our center waistband with the flap, the folded edge inside our pants, and we've matched it at the center front. Do the same thing at the side, just spinning the pants around, match that side seam to that quarter mark that we made earlier. Continue along the pants and match all of the seams, where all of the marks, to those 4 seams. So you'll be matching your waistband at your center back, your 2 side seams, and your center front. So you should have 4 pins in your waistband holding it into place when you've finished this. Okay, so on our next step, you'll see here now we have where the waistband is, we have all this extra fabric. So what we need to do is stretch the waistband. So you can see that I've stretched the waistband only. I do not want to stretch the pants. The pants already have the excess fabric, so I just want to stretch the waistband by giving it a gentle pull and clip that evenly between the 2 pins. So using your thumb, I'm holding that, and I'll clip in to pin there. So you might need to use a lot of clips to keep that nice and secure. So as we sew that, we want to make sure that we're going to be stretching our waistband the whole time and not stretching our pants. So if you go ahead and do that between all of the pin markers, and you'll end up with your waistband stretched out and your pants to match. We'll head on over to our overlocker, and with the pants facing up, we've got the waistband facing down. I want to start by lifting up my overlocker, and remember we're stretching the waistband only, not the actual pants. So I'll try and keep my hand out of the way. So you can see here, as I'm putting this through, I'm actually going to gently be pulling. See how the pants are against the waistband? I want to gently pull that so that that waistband is stretched out as I'm going to be overlocking that. So I will show you how we have attached our waistband now to our pants. Now I've done a rookie error. You'll see there, remember we had that hole where we're threading our elastic through? Well, before we attached it, we should have made sure that that hole was on the inside, not on the outside of our pants. I'm not going to unpick my pants now because I am too lazy to unpick overlocking, and what I'll do is thread my elastic through and cover it up with a zigzag stitch at the end. I do like when we thread our elastic through to anchor it down so it doesn't roll around in the waistband. So I will actually do that when I thread the elastic through that hole, which is now on my right side of my fabric. I will actually use that as one of my anchor points, and I will just do a zigzag stitch over that to cover it up. So if you've done the same thing and we forgot to check, don't worry, we will fix that up. So aren't our pants looking fab? We are nearly finished. So let's go on over and thread our elastic through and measure it. So once you're happy with how your elastic fits around your waistband, you'll have your two edges of your elastic just hanging out of that opening. So what we need to do is we need to put the elastic, one side of it facing down, and fold the other side over the top of it. So what we're in effect doing is creating a nice flat seam. Just going to push mine through. So what you'll have is your elastic sitting nice and flat like that. So just pin that where you measured it on your body. I like to put my pins in like this. And then what we're going to do is join that elastic together on our sewing machine. And we're going to sew straight down there, across, up and across, and make a square. And that will just create a nice even tension on our elastic. We're just going to make sure that we've got both edges of our elastic underneath the foot. And we're just going to sew straight down. Leave your pin in, so leave your needle in, remove your pin, and just turn your elastic so you're now sewing the opposite way. And again, turning your elastic. This can be a little bit bulky. We'll move our pants in under there. Now make sure that the edges of your elastic are nice and flush. So we want to make sure that the top edges of our elastic are nice and straight as we're sewing our square. And I'm stopping before I get to the end, and I'm just going to be turning that around to catch that. And now I've just sewn a little square of stitching in my elastic, so I can cut off the excess elastic and thread it back into the waistband. So what I've done just to finish off my waistband is on this side seam here, I have just straight stitched through the elastic. That'll just stop the elastic turning as I'm wearing them. And then on that other side where I'd left the hole, I have just done a zigzag stitch. So I've just closed that hole up with a zigzag stitch, and being a dark fabric, you can't actually see it. So now we have done our waistband. It's a good time to try your pants on and check them for length and pin them up to where you want to wear them, and then we will finish our final step of hemming. When I hem my pants, I love this little tool here. It's just a sewing knitting gauge. Now I know that I have my hems at 2.5 centimeters for these pants, so all I do is just move the slider to 2.5 centimeters. And then using this edge of the ruler, what we do is we pop that on the folded edge on the wrong side of our pants, and that will go on the folded edge of our pants, and we want the raw edge to match where that orange, so that orange part is on the raw edge of the hem and that flat part is on the folded edge of the hem, and that's going to be the right measurement. And you can continue then pinning your hem up and measuring as you go around with this gauge, and you will know your hem is even all the way. I'm doing my hemming on a cover stitch machine, so I don't actually want to use pins, so I'll just clip that, and then I'm going to go around and mark all of my hems at 2.5 centimeters, and then I'm going to do it on my cover stitch. If you don't have a cover stitch, you can just pin your hem up, and you can finish this using a long straight seam on your sewing machine. And here is our finished pair of pants. with our beautiful jeans pocket and super comfy, worn with my Sweet Cheeks sweater. Thanks for being part of the sew along today. If there's anything else you want me to sew, please leave a comment below. If there is any feedback, also please let me know. I'm fairly new to this, but I love doing it and I love helping people to sew. So if I can offer you any help and get better doing it, that's awesome. And I hope you enjoy your Walk Boldly pants.